screamed, I cried, I called everybody up that I knew. Yeah.
On September 27th, remains known as X267 were finally identified as Michael Salerno.
The National Memorial Cemetery called the Punch Bowl. Mm-hmm. Have you been there?
Yeah.
That's where your brother's been.
I didn't even know he was there.
He's been there since 1949.
7 years ago, we brought you the story of Boise and Jean Roman and how her family found out her brother was buried in the Punch Bowl in Hawaii, formerly known as the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. For 75 years, they had no idea where he was, unable to bring him back home to Pennsylvania. Private First Class Michael Salerno, Marine Corps, was killed in the Battle of Tarawa, a tiny island in the Pacific where nearly 1,100 Marines lost their lives. Only about half were eventually recovered and nearly 100 were unidentifiable. Salerno was one of those unknown until September of 2018, as you just heard. But he was just one of hundreds of unknown soldiers buried in the Punch Bowl. And since that time, dozens more have been reunited with their families. Last week, another Idaho family got the moment they had been waiting decades to see. 88 years ago, a young man from Parma answered his country's call and fought in a war half a world away and never came back. But he's home now. Here's Hunter Funk.
Flights come in every day at the Boise airport. But this flight, on this day, it's a little different. Because for the first time in 80 years, Second Lieutenant Charles Atteberry finally made it back home. A soldier captured, killed, and unidentified since World War II, now returning to the state where his story began, and where his family finally got the chance to meet him.
I said, I'm glad you're home.
Oh, it was just unbelievable. I just thought, oh, how much it would have meant to his mother. I just thought I was so glad at least I was here in her behalf.
From the tarmac, the Idaho National Guard and the Boise Valley POW MIA riders escorted him through the Treasure Valley to the funeral home. Atterbury was just 26 years old when he died. Born in Parma, he did what most his family did.
A lot of military in our family. All four of the brothers served in the military. Their offspring, 5 of them, had served in the military.
Charles joined the Army in 1937. He served in Alaska for 2 years. Then he was deployed to the Philippines in September 1940. His unit, the 31st Infantry Division, fought in the Philippines as the Japanese were advancing through the Pacific. In January 1941, he was promoted to second lieutenant, defending Manila until December of that year. At that point, Charles was captured, enduring what's known as the Bataan Death March in April 1942.
Well, he survived that. 65 miles of walking, hardly any water, hardly any rations. If you fell, you died. And if you weren't dead when you hit the ground, the Japanese killed you. They bayoneted and shot people. It was terrible. We can't even, today in our society, we can't even begin to believe. You can't believe the heinous stuff that happened.
As a prisoner of war, he went through the unimaginable, surviving what were called the hell ships, which were vessels that ferried prisoners across the Pacific.
Conditions unbearable. They had no plumbing. They had no sanitary efficient. They were provided a minimal amount of, less than a cup of rice a day and very little water.
Charles made it through these transports until January 1945.
Carrier aircraft from the USS Hornet scored a direct hit on the Maru, killed 300 instantly.
Charles is believed to have survived the hit, but died a few days later. And for generations, this was all his family knew.
What Charles went through, I mean, as a prisoner, being on those Japanese held ships, and being killed so close to when the war was over, and he could have come home. And it's just almost unbelievable.
His body became one of hundreds of unidentified U.S. soldiers buried in a mass grave in Takeo Harbor, Formosa. In 1949, he became one of 407 unknown soldiers in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific of Hawaii. But the family wouldn't learn those details until science and time did what hope alone could not. In 2018, the U.S. military began using DNA testing to identify soldiers buried in that mass grave. Ray and other relatives submitted samples and waited.
Hi, Cassie.
On June 6, 2025,
I work for Department of the Army.
they got the call they never thought would come.
I have an update for the family regarding your great uncle, Second Lieutenant Charles Atteberry. We lost him, of course, in World War II. I really look forward to speaking to the family. If you'll give me a call back as soon as you get this.
And lo and behold, we got that impossible phone call in June from the case manager for Charles.
A 100% DNA match.
It's just unbelievable to get a phone call like that.
For decades, the Adterbury family held on to fragments of his memories. Second Lieutenant Charles Atteberry was officially accounted for. And on Monday, in Parma, there was a full military service for a man who had been gone longer than most people at the service had been alive.
Welcome home, Charles Atteberry. May you find rest, and may our great God continue to bless your family.
Charles was placed right beside his parents. A homecoming 8 decades overdue.
The only thing I really had to say was, I wish I got to know you. I think I liked him.
After all these years, finally, he can be laid to rest with his mother and dad in that little cemetery.
A chapter finally closed, giving the family much needed closure. Though there is still one question that still remains. Charles's brother Lloyd was a pilot in the military, and Lloyd became missing in action in 1943 after it was reported that he was shot down. His body was never recovered. The Adterbury say they will just have to keep believing in the power of hope.
Yeah, they do. I mean, those stories always get to me. It's a great story that, of course, the people doing that, the agency doing God's work. And so, yeah, finally home.
Yeah, couldn't keep my eyes dry for that one.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Hunter. Nice job. Well, so Atterbury's family did submit a DNA sample that same year. We brought you the story about Private First Class Michael Salerno back in 2018. So it took him 7 years to come to this appropriate conclusion. Well, this has happened because of what's happening in a lab located above a bowling alley on Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. The POW MIA Accounting Agency, that lab, along with a sister lab in Hawaii, opened in 2013. And their task was to identify the nearly 72,000 soldiers unaccounted for from World War II and the 10,000 more or so from our conflicts since. That first year, in 2013, the agency identified 59 service members by going to old battlefields and just digging around. Then in 2015, Congress mandated they up their output and they identify at least 200 bodies a year. So they started opening graves of the unknown. And they've been able to find out some of those coffins contain not one, but pieces of up to 3 different Marines or soldiers killed in action. And since then, they've uncovered more than 1,000. In 2022, the number of unknowns named rose to 134. In 2023, it was 159. Last year, they identified 172, and this year, 2025, the agency has accounted for and reunited 231 formerly unknown soldiers, including Parma's Charles Atteberry. There are still just under 81,000 Americans unaccounted for from World War II through today.